There are roughly 1.1 million Rolex watches produced every year. That sounds like a lot. It isn't. Patek Philippe makes around 70,000. Rolex makes more than almost anyone in true luxury, and still there is a waiting list. For a watch you are paying full price for. No negotiation, no sale, no end-of-season clearance. The retail price of a Rolex has never gone down. Not once. In fact, Rolex raised prices in 2022 by an average of 8%. In 2023, they raised them again. In 2024, again. The secondary market, where real customers actually acquire many models, charges 2, 3, sometimes 4 times the official retail price. People pay it. This is not an accident. This is not luck. This is the most deliberately engineered pricing strategy in the history of consumer goods. And it started with a man who understood something most business people never do, that the price is the product. Hans Wilsdorf founded Rolex in London in 1905. He was 24 years old. He had no watchmaking heritage to speak of, no famous family name, no Swiss mountain workshop passed down through generations. What he had was a conviction that wristwatches, then considered a novelty for women, could be made precise enough for men to trust with their lives. The watch industry at the time was dominated by pocket watches. Wristwatches were decorative at best, unreliable at worst. Wilsdorf saw that as an engineering problem, not a market problem. He sourced movements from a Swiss manufacturer called Igler and obsessed over accuracy. In 1910, a Rolex wristwatch became the first of its kind to receive a precision certification from the official Swiss Testing Institute. He moved the company to Geneva in 1919, partly for the watchmaking infrastructure, and partly to escape British luxury taxes. Swiss identity was not incidental, it was strategic. Swiss-made was already a signal of quality. Wilsdorf understood branding before the word existed in business schools. The 1920s were the proving ground. Rolex placed its watches on explorers, aviators, and adventurers. In 1926, they introduced the Oyster, the world's first waterproof wristwatch. They then strapped it to the wrist of Mercedes Glaetze as she swam the English Channel. She crossed. The watch worked. Rolex took out a full-page advertisement in the Daily Mail the next day. That is not marketing, that is theater. By the 1950s, Rolex was equipping mountaineers on Everest and divers with the Submariner, rated to 100 meters of depth. The watches were tools first and symbols second. That sequence matters enormously. Credibility built the myth. The myth did not build the credibility. Here is where the story gets interesting, and where most companies would have made a catastrophic mistake. By the 1960s, Rolex was respected. It was successful. It had proven its engineering. The logical next move, the move every consultant would have recommended, was to scale, to grow volume, to capture the middle market. Wilsdorf's answer before he died in 1960 had essentially already been given: absolutely not. The Hans Wilsdorf Foundation, a private charitable foundation, inherited the company upon his death. No shareholders, no quarterly earnings calls, no Wall Street analysts demanding growth at any cost. This structure, unique in the world of major luxury brands, meant Rolex could operate on a time horizon measured in decades, not quarters. The company did not need to maximize revenue next year. It needed to protect the brand forever. This is the turning point. Not a single dramatic decision, but a structural one that made all the other decisions possible. While LVMH consolidated dozens of luxury brands under public market pressure in the 1980s and 90s, while Richemont answered to shareholders, Rolex answered to a foundation whose mission was not profit maximization, but the perpetual prestige of a single name. The incentives were completely different. So were the outcomes. Rolex authorized dealers, the only legal way to buy a new Rolex, are contractually prohibited from discounting. A dealer who sells below retail loses their authorization. That is not a slap on the wrist. Losing Rolex authorization can end a jewelry business. The dealers who carry Rolex carry it because Rolex is the reason customers walk through the door. The leverage is total. Production is deliberately capped. Rolex has never officially confirmed its annual output, but industry estimates settled around 1 million units per year for over a decade, a number that has crept upward slowly. Compare this to the reported demand. Analysts at Morgan Stanley estimated in 2022 that Rolex could sell significantly more if it chose to. It does not choose to. The waitlist is not a supply chain problem. It is policy. The economic result is extraordinary. When demand exceeds supply at a fixed price, the secondary market absorbs the overflow at a premium. A stainless steel Daytona retails for around $14,800. On the secondary market, the same watch has sold for $30,000 to $50,000 in recent years. Rolex collects none of that upside, but Rolex collects something more valuable, the perception that its product is worth far more than you can buy it for. That perception feeds back into the primary market. Customers who cannot get a watch at retail, and there are many, feel the scarcity acutely. They visit dealers repeatedly. They build relationships. They buy other models to demonstrate loyalty. In some cases, they are placed on lists for watches that will not arrive for years, and they wait, willingly, because waiting is itself evidence that the watch is worth waiting for. In 2022, Morgan Stanley and Lux Consult published a joint analysis estimating Rolex's revenue at approximately 9.35 billion Swiss francs. That made Rolex the largest watch company in the world by revenue, larger than Swatch Group, which owns 17 brands. One brand, one name, more revenue than 17. The operating margin is estimated at around 30% for a manufacturing company in Switzerland, where labor costs are among the highest on earth. The margin exists because Rolex never competes on price. It has permanently removed itself from that conversation. When you do not discount, you do not train your customer to wait for a discount. The full price becomes the only price. Psychologically and financially, that is a completely different business. Other brands have tried to copy this. Some have managed pieces of it. None have replicated the full architecture, because the architecture depends on something most companies structurally cannot do: ignore short-term revenue. A public company with Rolex's demand would have doubled production in 2019. They would have captured the post-pandemic luxury boom. They would have had a very good 3 years, and they would have spent the next decade repairing a diluted brand. Rolex watched competitors make exactly that mistake. Rolex made no move. There is also the matter of quality control, which is not incidental to the pricing strategy. It is the foundation of it. Rolex manufactures an estimated 95% of watch components in-house, across facilities in Geneva, Biel, and Plan-les-Ouates. Every movement is tested in 5 positions and at 3 temperatures. The brand's COSC certification standard is applied across nearly its entire range. When you charge this much, the watch must justify it. Rolex understood that the story falls apart if the product fails. Wilsdorf once said, and this may be the most important sentence in Rolex's history, that he wanted Rolex to be a name that would be recognized throughout the world as a symbol of high quality. Not highest volume, not most accessible. A symbol. Symbols derive their power from exclusion as much as from inclusion. He built a company around that truth and then structured it so that no future owner could undo it. The lesson is not never discount. Most companies should not attempt this strategy. The lesson is that price is a signal, and signals must be consistent to be believed. The moment you violate the signal, even once, even subtly, you tell the market what you actually think your product is worth. Rolex has never told the market that, not in 119 years. Rolex does not advertise a price. Rolex does not hold sales events. Rolex does not issue press releases about revenue. The brand communicates through scarcity, through heritage, through the secondary market doing its pricing work for free, and through the simple, devastating fact that the people who have one never seem to want to sell it. That retention rate is the real product. The watch is just the delivery mechanism. Every business school teaches pricing elasticity. The idea that lower prices increase demand and higher prices reduce it. Rolex did not get the memo, or more accurately, it read the memo and filed it in the bin. In luxury, the demand curve does not always slope downward. Sometimes a higher price is the reason for the demand. Economists call this a Veblen good. Rolex just calls it Tuesday. The company that refused to grow too fast, refused to go public, refused to discount, refused to explain itself, is now the most recognized watch brand on the planet, with one product line, in one category. Built by one man's instinct and preserved by one foundation's discipline. If that sounds simple, it is. Simple is the hardest strategy to protect. Almost no one manages it. Next time, the company that had the best product, the best team, and the best moment in history and still collapsed inside of 5 years. Subscribe for more hidden empires.